The sun was a ghost behind the veil of ash, a pale, watery disk in a perpetual twilight. The air, thick with the smell of wet charcoal and something more primal, crushed fern, damp earth, the iron tang of distant rain, filled the lungs with every breath. Underfoot, the ground was a spongy mattress of decaying vegetation, muffling all sound except for the constant, haunting chorus, the skittering of giant millipedes in the leaf litter, the low hoot of an unseen amphibian, and the rhythmic, crashing footsteps that made the very ferns tremble. This was not a world built for mammals. Not yet. We followed the sound, moving with a silence born of both terror and reverence. Our guide, a creature whose name we could never pronounce, was a Repenomamus, though to call it a mere guide was like calling a hurricane a breeze. She was a bristling, muscular mass the size of a badger, clad in coarse, brown fur, her gait a purposeful waddle that spoke of immense power. Her long snout, lined with sharp, piercing teeth, twitched incessantly, sampling the air. She was a mammal, yes, but a mammal from a different dream of evolution, one where her kind were not the skulking, nocturnal shadows of dinosaurian rule, but active, formidable predators in their own right. We had earned her tolerance, a temporary truce brokered by the strange, glowing device on my wrist that seemed to emit a frequency of calm. Or perhaps she simply found us too bizarre to eat. We had come to the Cretaceous, 125 million years ago, to a place that would one day be fossilized into the Liaoning province of China, to witness not the age of giants, but the age of intimate, brutal drama unfolding beneath them. Our mission was to observe the Repenomamus robustus, a species known only from fossils, including one astounding specimen found with the bones of a baby Psittacosaurus in its stomach. We sought context for that single, fossilized moment of predation. We sought the story. The Repenomamus, we called her Rhea, stopped abruptly. Her whole body went rigid, ears swiveling like satellite dishes. She lowered her head, her whiskers brushing the fronds of a cycad. We froze, our cameras hovering, recording every twitch. Ahead, in a small clearing where a fallen tree fern created a natural arch, a group of Psittacosaurus moved with the delicate, precise steps of ballet dancers. These were not the towering behemoths of later eras, but smaller, bipedal dinosaurs about the size of a large dog. Their beaks, perfect for cropping tough vegetation, gave them a parrot-like appearance. One, noticeably smaller, lagged behind the group, its attention caught by a glittering dragonfly. It was a juvenile, its legs still slightly too long for its body, its movements possessing that endearing, uncoordinated clumsiness of youth. Rhea became a living coil of tension. Every muscle, from her powerful shoulders to her thick, short tail, was drawn tight. This was no opportunistic scavenger. This was an ambush predator calculating vectors, wind direction, and the exact moment of structural failure in the herd's vigilance. She did not charge. Instead, she flowed. A burst of startling speed, a brown blur under the giant ferns, a trajectory that intercepted the juvenile's path to the safety of the adults. The world erupted in sound. The adult Psittacosaurus bellowed a warning, a harsh, guttural cry that split the air. The juvenile squealed, a high-pitched sound of pure panic. Rhea was upon it, not with the bone-crushing force of a Tyrannosaurus, but with horrifying, mammalian efficiency. She used her weight to bowl the youngster over, her powerful forelimbs grappling, her needle-like teeth seeking the spinal column or the soft throat. It was not a fair fight in any cosmic sense, it was biology, rendered in stark, uncompromising clarity. The struggle was brief, violent, and deeply moving. The herd, after a moment of defensive posturing, retreated, their survival calculus written in millennia of genetic code. One lost juvenile was acceptable, a wounded adult was not. Rhea, panting heavily, dragged her prize into the dense undergrowth. The triumphant, gory scene was not our finale, however. It was merely the end of the first act. For the next 2 days, we observed a different Rhea. A mother. In a burrow she had commandeered from some smaller creature, nestled between the buttressed roots of a ginkgo tree, 3 tiny, blind pups nuzzled against her belly. They were hairless, their eyes sealed shut, utterly dependent. The meat she had hunted was not just for her. She would chew it, partially digest it, and then regurgitate the nutrient-rich pulp for her squirming offspring. Here, in the shadow of the giants, was a scene of tender, warm-blooded motherhood. The predator was a provider. The killer of baby dinosaurs was a nurturing parent. This duality, this complex biological truth, was the heart of our story. It was a reminder that the Cretaceous was not a monolithic age of reptile dominance, but a mosaic ecosystem where multiple evolutionary experiments were running in parallel. We left Ray's territory, moving deeper into the forest primeval. The canopy, 100 feet above, was a lost world in itself, a tangle of conifers, early flowering plants, and twisting lianas where feathered dinosaurs like the microraptors glided from branch to branch, their forewings making a soft whoosh as they passed. The air hummed with insects the size of your hand, giant sawflies, iridescent beetles, and damselflies with wingspans like falcons. This was a world of extraordinary detail, a world where every leaf seemed to harbor a drama, every pool of water a miniature universe. One afternoon, we came upon a lake so still it perfectly mirrored the strange, alien sky. And there, at the water's edge, we witnessed a scene of such surreal beauty it felt like a hallucination. A male incisivosaurus, a small, bizarre theropod with buck-toothed, rodent-like front teeth perfect for gnawing roots and nuts, was engaged in a display. His body was covered in simple, hair-like feathers, but along his arms and tail were longer, ribbon-like plumes of a dazzling, iridescent blue. He danced, hopping from foot to foot, shaking these plumes so they caught the faint light, creating ripples of color. His audience, a seemingly indifferent female, pecked at the ground nearby, but occasionally she would glance at him, and he would redouble his efforts. This was not the crude bellowing of movie monsters, this was nuanced, visual communication. A courtship ritual built on color and movement, a hint of the elaborate sexual selection that would one shape the birds, his direct descendants. But the Cretaceous, for all its beauty, was a sword of Damocles suspended by the thinnest of threads. We felt it first as a vibration, a deep, subsonic tremor that traveled up through the soles of our boots. The forest fell silent, the insects ceased their humming, the dinosaurs lifted their heads, sensing a wrongness in the world. Then came the sound, a distant, rolling thunder that was not thunder. It was the collective footfall of an army. We climbed a rocky outcrop, pushing through giant ferns that shed spores in golden clouds, and looked out across a vast floodplain. And there, moving with the slow, inevitable grace of continental drift, was a herd of Sauroposeidon. They were not just large, they redefined the very scale of life. Their necks, like living suspension bridges, swayed 40 feet above the ground, their small heads methodically stripping the tops of araucaria trees. Their bodies were living mountains, their footsteps creating temporary ponds that would become fossilized footprints. The ground shook with their passing, a seismic rhythm that spoke of a world where gravity was a gentle suggestion. Watching them, one understood the true meaning of the word, dinosaur. This was their world. We, and Rhea, and the dancing Incisivosaurus, were just living in it. Yet, even here, at the feet of titans, the story of resilience played out. In the mud churned up by the sauropods, we saw the tracks of smaller creatures, a line of three-toed theropod prints, the delicate scratch marks of a proto-mammal, the sinuous drag of a crocodilian returning to a river. Life, in all its forms, was seizing every opportunity, every niche. Our time was running short. The device on my wrist, our only tether to our own time, began to emit a soft, urgent pulse. We had one last stop to make, a place we knew only from a single, poignant fossil. We traveled to the shores of a vast inland sea. The air here was different, salty, tinged with the smell of decaying seaweed and the cries of pterosaurs that wheeled overhead on leathery wings. The beach was not sand, but fine silt, perfect for preserving moments in time. And there, we found them. A pair of Meilong, the soundly sleeping dragon. They were small, turkey-sized troodontids, covered in a downy coat of feathers for insulation. They were curled together in a nest-like depression at the base of a rotten log, their long tails wrapped around their bodies, their heads tucked under their arms, just like a sleeping bird. One was slightly larger, perhaps an adult, the other a sub-adult. They had died in this pose, instantly, together, 125 million years ago, ashed over by a volcanic eruption. Seeing them now, in life, the scene was one of profound peace and social bonding. They were not simply waiting out a cold night, this was rest, this was trust, this was companionship. We watched them for hours as the twilight deepened, seeing in their quiet repose a glimpse of the complex social behaviors, the warmth, and perhaps even the emotional depth of these creatures so often portrayed as mere monsters. As we prepared to leave, the device's pulse became a constant whine. We took our last readings, our final images. I looked out at the Cretaceous world, the sleeping Meilong, the distant, spectral forms of the sauropods on the horizon, the buzz and hum of a planet at its peak of Mesozoic creativity. I thought of Rhea, nursing her young in a burrow, a warm-blooded revolution in a world of scale and feather. This was not a static diorama, not a simplistic age of thunder lizards. It was a dynamic, brutal, beautiful, and deeply interconnected web of life. It was a world of dancers and giants, of nurturing killers and feathered lovers, of silent sleeps and earth-shaking footsteps. The transition back was not a gentle fade. It was a violent wrenching, a cacophony of reversed time that compressed epochs into seconds. The sensation of the warm, oxygen-rich air thinning, the smells of salt and fern evaporating, the sounds of the Cretaceous becoming a distant echo, then a memory, then a fossil in the mind. I now sit in a sterile lab, surrounded by the very bones we saw clothed in flesh and life. The Psittacosaurus rib, the Rhipinomama's jaw, the delicate, intertwined skeletons of the two-may long. They are no longer just specimens. They are souvenirs from a country that no longer exists, a country called the past. They whisper of a world where mammals dined on dinosaurs, where titans shook the earth, and where small, feathered creatures slept soundly, curled together against the gathering dark. They tell a story not of simplistic dominance, but of breathtaking complexity, a story where every player, from the smallest shrew-like creature to the largest sauropod, was simply trying to survive, to nurture, to dance, to live, on the eve of an unimaginable catastrophe. They remind us that our own world, our own time, is just another chapter in this long, unfinished story of life on Earth, a story of fragile, tenacious, and endlessly beautiful resilience.